Hi, my name is Romek. I map for Red Faction. Say Red Faction is a very old game that a bunch of old people really enjoy to this day. Now, I would say Red Faction it's an old first-person shooter from a long time ago that's unfortunately been sort of forgotten, but there's so many elements to this day that make it a great game regardless of its age. So I think that's why people still play it. The first time I ever played Red Faction was, like, very shortly after it came out, and I rented it, and I beat it in one sitting. I think I was sick, and I was, like, home from school, and so it was, like, a great day, other than being sick, obviously. But, my birthday was, like, very short time after that, and I, asked for it for my birthday, as well. So I beat it a couple times before I think I ever even was introduced to multiplayer, or the PC version. I actually don't remember that, but I remember being so impressed by the editor. The editor was really what drew me to the game, or at least drew me back to the game and the community, and that's what kept me around for so long, obviously. But yeah, it wasn't so much. I actually don't know why I picked up the PC version, but I'm glad I did because it obviously led me to the editor. Prior to Red Faction, I think the only game I ever did any level editing for was StarCraft, and I love that, and I developed a lot of different maps for that, and then just being able to utilize the editor in Red Faction really like changed my life for a lot, for many years actually. But no, I mean not on the scale of the Red editor. Long time ago, there was a website called Levels for You, and it housed everybody's creations, all the mods, all the maps. It was just an incredible map, or it was an incredible website, and it had a lot of incredible people that were really pushing the envelope for the editor and for the game in general. And so my earliest memory is really finding that website, finding a community of other like-minded gamers and mappers, and delving into that like full force, jumping headfirst, basically. As odd as this may sound, like level design in general is just in my blood. My entire family are engineers and designers and woodworkers, all kinds of just some form of design. And so I think a lot of it was just instinct. Something within my blood like really attracted me to the editor, but really it was. This is gonna sound like a stoner thought, and I'm not high. It's not a stoner thought, and I had this thought when I was, like, 16. But I remember opening the editor, and I remember just looking at the empty void and having this thought like, "Wow, this is like another dimension." And this sounds bizarre, but I always thought, like, level editing was like developing this small little world that people could interact in, and I could create like another dimension, another world that other people could visit. And and most of my life I always wanted to be like a film director or in film. I always did photography. I was just always in video and photography, but there's something a lot more tangible to level design that you can't find in video or photography. And that is when you take a photo or when you take a video, yeah, you sort of capture this moment in time, but you're stuck within the bounds of the photo, of the video. But with the editor, you could create these worlds that you could interact in, and you could they were like these truly true time capsules. Unlike a photo can be a time capsule, a video can be a time capsule, but a level can you can interact with it. It's this place in time that is on repeat, and it's almost like a Star Trek episode or something. But I, obviously we've lost members of the community, but at any point, if we ever want to, we could launch their maps and we could delve into them and we could step right into their world, right out of their own mind. And I think that is what is so truly captivating about level design and about Red Faction in general, that a single person can make a whole map, a single person can make a whole mod. A lot of game development takes teams of people, and so the fact that a single person can launch this editor and create something that's in their mind, this little world, this little dimension, and allow people to interact within their little creation is something that I really cherish, and um, I'm so passionate about it, and it's something I want to do for the rest of my life. It's not, beyond photography and beyond video, which is something I'll continue doing. But really, there's something so tangible about level design, and it's just far. It's just hard for me to explain, but it's truly it's a 3D image. It's a 3D picture that people can interact in, and I just love that. There's nothing quite like that. There were all kinds of communities back in the day. There was the mapping community, there was the competitive scene, there was all kinds of different little subgroups and subgenres, and they all sort of interwove together, and everybody had their spotlight. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like, people come back to Red Faction, everybody's like, yeah, I was sort of like a big deal for a while, or yeah, people knew me, people played my maps. Sort of everybody says that, and I love that because it's true. Everybody shared everything, and everybody played everybody's stuff, and everybody wanted to be part of everybody's stuff. And how many communities can you say that about? My cousin and I played it a lot together, and he actually helped me develop Snowed Out, the very first version of Snowed Out way back in the day. Nalshbach was his name, but we always played it together, and he had a lot of patience for me just to sit there during our hangouts and just level design all day. And so I would say really that's from an outside perspective or outside experiences, it's really just that. I, there was a lot of LAN parties back in the day with friends, but nobody was really part of the community. Only my cousin and I were really part of the community that, from people from an outside perspective that I actually hung out with. Sometimes, yeah, if I could talk people into playing it, but it was just short-lived stuff. We'd play for an hour and move on to the next game. I don't think so. I think Levels for You was the only one I was part of. I know there was other websites, but I sort of just visited those. I became a staff member on Levels for You for a short time. I mean, that's how much I used it. So it was really, it's like me on the Discord now. It's just, I'm always there. I'm always going to reply to everybody. I'm the guy who just never leaves. I was sort of like that with Levels for You as well. I just loved it so much. I love the community. I love the small town feel. Everybody knows each other. Everybody's around. Like, it's just, and the Discord has that now, and that's a big element that I love so much, is that small town feel, the small community feel. Everybody knows everybody, but at the same time, everybody supports each other. It's not like, it's awesome. I don't know. But yeah, to really answer your question, no, it was really just Levels for You. Man, back in the day, it was tough being a mapper. You know what I mean? There weren't tutorials. We had no YouTube. We were making this stuff up as we went. We were sharing insider secrets. If you knew other mappers, if you're even on that level with other mappers, or it was just really opening other mappers' maps and figuring out how they did it. That was really our secret for tutorials, was like one person would figure one element out and then everybody would emulate that one person. But other than that, Volition, THQ, whatever, there wasn't really that much support for the game. I think there was 2 patches and then that was it. And I remember when the second patch came out, and I think it removed some stuff from the editor, some buttons that didn't do anything anyways, but still it was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then and that was that. We didn't have any tutorials. We had a SDK kit that they released, allowing us to mod and develop our own, custom stuff. But really, it was Wild West times for mappers back in the day. It was you figure it out yourself kind of deal, and it was just a different time, at least. I mean, at least for Red, I'm sure at the time, because there were other editors at the time. There was Hammer, Unreal had an editor, and that was like the most similar to Red at the time. But they were all so different that you couldn't really you couldn't utilize much from one editor to the next. So everybody had their own style, and again, that's another really interesting thing about the game back then, is like we weren't all going off the same tutorials. We all had to figure it out ourselves, so everybody had very different levels, and it was very interesting, because you would launch somebody's map and it would offer gameplay, or it'd offer techniques that you didn't even conceptualize, and that's saying something. That was just so exciting to be a mapper and see a new map be uploaded, and you're like, whoa, what does this offer? Most maps are crap. But there were obviously those top tier mappers who would drop stuff, and it changed everything in a way. I mean, you have guys like Rex. You got, there's so many, but for me, it was always Rex. I always looked up to that guy. I wanted to make a map as good as that guy. That's really was my goal. It was like, if I can make a map that looks as good as Rex's maps, then I win. Or, I've accomplished what I wanted to do. And I would say I think I finally accomplished that years after leaving Red Faction and then coming back, and I had this map that was like half done, and I always wanted to revisit it, and COVID hit and everybody was stuck inside, and I was like, I'm going to check out Red Faction. I see Goober's link to the Discord, bada bing, bada bang. So at the time, like I was saying, since so many mappers released all these different variety of maps, all these completely different concepts that, at the time, again, the only thing that you could compare it to is really Counter-Strike. I'm sure Unreal too, but I really didn't delve into the custom map scene at the time, the community. But with Counter-Strike, there were a lot of custom maps. There was even micro maps. They called them rats maps. Rats, like you're the size of a rat. And that was awesome, but as a very limiting editor, and so we always knew we could do better than Counter-Strike. And so when guys like Rex started dropping these very polished maps with these like perfect lighting, custom textures that all flowed very well and fit together, it just it really pushed the envelope, and it pushed the bar up, and everybody was like, well, nobody's ever gonna hit that. And so, but there was a lot of guys like that. A lot of guys that had their own style that really were in their own league completely. And for me, I always liked the micro maps. That was a lot of fun to me. And I understand that it's a love-hate thing, but at the time, it was definitely the most popular style. And people can argue that today, but I was there, and every micro server was like filled. People loved micro maps, and a lot of people tried them, try to make them, and a lot of them were trash. A lot of them were, I don't even want to say that. They were all awesome in their own sense, because really what the editor allowed these people to do was to try something, to be creative regardless of gameplay. If they knew nothing about gameplay and they never studied how to develop games, they could at least launch this editor, even if they had no creativity. They could be like, well, screw it, I'll just make this room. I'll use this room to learn this editor. And in a way, that was a lot of people's tutorials for the editor, was looking around them and just making what they saw. And I think that's why we have so many micro maps that are sort of unfinished, or just sort of lack of gameplay, but rather just like this big room for no reason. I think it's just a lot of people were learning the editor and utilizing what they had around them in order to develop their skills prior to stepping into bigger, more advanced levels, and concepts. But yeah, the micro scene was a huge scene at the time, way back in the day. And I'm not like a big gamer anymore, but I assume there's custom level design, or I assume there's level editors for modern games, but I'd be curious to know how many have micro maps. And I'm not saying that Red Faction was definitely not the originator of micro maps, obviously, but I do think they, with guys like Rex, it developed the concept into something very tangible and something very fascinating. And I still think you could do a full micro game, and I guess somebody finally did, but um, I just it's like StarCraft back in the day, and Warcraft 3. People use their people use their level editors to create entirely new games. Tower defense, you have all these game styles, hero styles, like, or hero maps, or hero games in general, like yeah, that one. I don't know. Whatever. But like people developed full games through these level editors, and I feel like with Red Faction, if it had more spotlight, people would have taken some of these concepts and built new things, like a micro game or something like that. But for me, it has to be something like I'm super passionate about, something that like really speaks to me and won't leave my freaking brain. And a lot of level design is challenging yourself. What can I accomplish? What can I actually do? I understand there's limits to this engine, but how far can I push it? Can I actually accomplish this concept? Can I actually finish this very complicated idea I have? A lot of those challenges I really want to test and push myself with. But again, it's a 20-year-old game, so it's not like, I don't level design anymore for anybody else. I really do it to challenge myself, and eventually I'd like to step into new engines, but that's another topic altogether. But really, it's just my inspiration comes from everyday life and just some random idea that will pop in my head at 1 in the morning or something. I'll get up to pee and I suddenly have this stupid idea, and then I just can't sleep, and next thing I know, I'm spending 2 weeks on it. What's funny is my grandpa's an engineer. He's like 92 or 3, and he won't give it up because I think he just loves it so much. But he's the same way. He'll have an idea at 1 in the morning that will keep him up. Even to this day, and he acts like a little kid about it. He gets so excited and he's so passionate about it. I think, like I said, I think it's just in my blood. I don't know, but it's like scratching an itch, level designing, and like I went in with the whole dimension thing. There's just still I have 1,000 ideas that I'll never get to, but I'm gonna try to pump out as many as I can for as long as I can, you know, before I'm out of here. I have so much passion in this, it makes me zero money. But the thing is, it's just such a fun game, and maybe 10, 20 people play these stupid things that I spend hours on, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's like I'm creating it for me, and at the same time, like I was saying, I'm developing these time capsules that in 20 years I can step back into, or 20 years somebody else can step back into and be like, "Oh yeah, I remember this." Or even if I'm gone, if we're all gone and this game still exists somehow, and it's still played and people can still play it on their machines, and they can still launch these old maps and they can visit these old worlds, there's something to that, and I get really excited about that concept. So I hope for that. I hope to have all these in VR someday, so back in the day, Levels for You had this section on mods, and it was like mod development, and all these different pages of all these different concepts and people developing these custom mods. And one of them was Iron Sun mod, and that was one of the only mods to really be completed, I guess you could say. Completed, I think it was completed. But that one stands out the most because it just had so much hype behind it. It had so many hands behind it, so many people, so many it just so many people contributing, that it was very cool to see. And that mod to this day, even though it's not that enjoyable to fun, or oh my gosh, that enjoyable to play, it's still awesome because so many of the community members are part of that mod, And uh, it was one of the only projects I can think of that just had so many people come together and be part of it. Uh, we I don't think we had that a lot back in the day, because it was hard. It was hard to conjure. It was hard to get people together and develop things back in the day. You'd have one-on-one maps, and I did that a lot, and a lot of other mappers did that. But as far as like getting a bunch of mappers together and people to develop weapons and to develop the custom tables and develop maps, like that was quite a feat of and that's something I think the community should be very proud of is Iron Sun mod, regardless of its playability. Just the fact that people came together and actually made that is really cool. And I don't think it's too late for us to make another project like that. And regardless of this game being 20 years old, it easily has another 20 years left. Well, Gardner really stands out because he ran Levels for You, and he really gave people a platform to come together. And he was very passionate about it. He really cared about it. And he reminds me of Goober today. And Goober's obviously somebody. Goober, I admire so much. I have so much respect for him because of so much of what he's done, and he's kept this community together. He brought it back to life in a lot of ways. He's like our mad scientist, and we're all Frankenstein. We're all the terrible, ugly monster that he created. Thanks, Goober. But I would say also there's like Kung Kriller, who was really cool. D2K, he was an incredible person. Sir Lots of Pot was very passionate, and he was a community member who loved everybody, who reached out to everybody. And he even has a map with a bunch of, which just sort of like a tribute to other mappers. And that's just like, man, that's cool. No Clans Frank, he was a big name back in the day. As far as competitive scene, I really don't know much about the competitive scene. That was not my scene. I never really delved into that. I had 28K internet back in the day. No joke. I just lived way out in the Goondocks, and there was a what we call Cox cable out here. I don't know what you guys have, but it was like broadband, and I was stuck on 28K. Everybody else had this like lightning fast internet, and here I am like watching, people jump around my screen, and if I got a kill, I was so excited. But so I just stuck to editing or stuck to level design. I was like, I can't really play it competitively with my setup, so I will just do what I'm good at and what I love. It kind of worked out regardless. So, but yeah, those are sort of the names that stand out. Obviously, Rex stands out. He was sort of my idol. So, I mean, there's drama, but it definitely didn't seem to seep into the mapping community quite as much as other communities. You could sort of see all the chaos from afar, like, oh, I'm not going to reply to that forum thread, but it was like, but there was definitely drama. I was a young, angry teenager, so I'm sure I brought my own drama to the scene, and just, there was random drama throughout everywhere, but I don't think it got that bad in the custom mapping scene because there's a lot of passion there. There wasn't so much of like a competitiveness. It was just more like excitement and passion, so I think my Red Faction days came to an end way back in the day was because there was just an accumulation of a lot of things. I was getting older, I got my license, I had a girlfriend, I was doing a lot. I moved to a different state, but I would say a big part of it was just the natural progression of things. Like people stopped uploading maps as much. You just saw the community start to dwindle a little. And then Red Faction 2 was announced, and it sort of like put life back in the community, and people were really excited about it. And then as more information came out about the game, and the fact that there was no level editor and there was no multiplayer, it just sort of killed the buzz for a lot of people. And it just felt like the end. It felt like, well, crap, everybody's going to move to Red Faction 2, and this game's just going to die. And I think it just slowly dwindled, and levels for you started becoming barren. The mapping section became a little bit barren, and people were moving on to other games, and it just felt like the community was dying. And it was sad because it was like my favorite thing in the world, you know? And just to see it sort of slowly come to an end was hard. And I think I would poke I'd pop my head back in to see sort of what everybody was doing, and just to see like, oh wow, like not many comments, a couple new maps, but nothing from any of like the top mappers. It just felt like, oh wow, you know, like Red Frog stopped making maps. Oh, Red Rex left. Just all these big names started dropping off, and it just felt like a mourning period for the game. And I honestly thought it was over. I thought that was it, you know? And it never it never felt like a closed chapter in my life though. It never felt like it had a proper ending. It always just felt like it dwindled out, but there was like somebody could come along and revive it. Yeah, I don't know. But I thought about the game every year after I stopped playing it and after I left the community. And then I just remember one day thinking, why don't I own Red Faction on Steam? I should look into that. I'm sure it's cheap as hell. And I go see, I'm like, oh my God, $10? Fuck yeah, dude. So I bought it. And then, you know, I go to the comment section. I remember seeing Goober's post and just thinking like, and it just said like, Red Faction community lives. And I was like, what? Like, yes, holy crap. And so I joined, and I couldn't believe it, man. I honestly could not believe it. And there was like a new version of a new community update. It was like, what? And and it was like, oh yeah, servers are back, by the way. I know THQ turned them off many years ago, but yeah, they're back now. And it's like, I couldn't believe it. And it just felt like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, we've been here for a couple of years. And I was like, what? I missed out on all those years. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. And then as soon as I had some time, I just dedicated all this time to reopening Red and rediscovering my passion for it, relearning all these things that I had like freaking down pat, just like, what? How do I do this? What? And then it's just, I haven't really looked back since, about a year ago. So a year and a couple months. The original Snowed Out mod was just this whim idea we had, my cousin and I just we both love Christmas time, and, not Christians, but we sure love Christian time, and I think there was just this, at the time, uh, I think it was Conkrilla put out this tutorial to get third person or to get first person weapons back in the game. And I just figured it was like a great opportunity to learn that. And so I was like, well, let's make a mod. Let's make something simple. What's like a simple concept that won't kill us in production? And I was like, snowballs. That's easy. You know, just you don't even have to animate the arm. You just have it rotate out of frame. And so it really spawned with that one idea, and we're like, we really just need one good animation. That's it, you know. And after having to do it 12 times because I forget like a little vertice or whatever, we finally got it in game, and um, I think there was like one or two maps, and then we just pushed it out. We didn't have enough time to finish it before Christmas, so we just sort of pushed it out as it was. Um, the community later, which I didn't even realize, came together and started putting out maps specifically for the mod, and which was awesome because it clearly needed it. But really, it was like just this quick idea we had, and we wanted to get it done before Christmas. I think there was like, you know, a couple weeks before Christmas, and then with Snowed Out 2, it was really just with the current state of things with the Red Faction, it's sort of hard to get new weapons in the game. We have to relaunch this old 3D Studio Max 5 and get that going, and it's like, oh man, no, I don't want to do that. So For me, I looked back at what I've done in the past and I was like, well, I have this snowed out concept that was really never fleshed out, but it was a cool idea for what it is. It's a simple idea. We could easily, or I could easily flesh this out and sort of finish it. And so that's sort of what I did, and that was sort of the reason behind it was just knowing that new custom mods probably aren't going to be made for the game anytime soon. We probably won't get any new first person weapons, etc., etc. So I figured I'm going to take what we've got, this little unique concept here, and just flesh it out, put some proper maps behind it, put some proper detail, and just get it out there, get the balance right. And so it was really just no more than that, just you know, trying to give the community something cool, and fresh and new in a way without having to actually make new first person weapons. So Red Faction Unite was a really cool project that brought many of the mappers of Red Faction together. And it was through Levels for You, and it was through, I forgot who hosted it or who actually proposed the idea, but it was a simple idea. We come up with a theme, and then everybody makes a map around that theme, and we release it as a map pack. And it was less about the competition and really more about coming together, which is really cool. So that's how I always view Red Faction Unite. I think I missed the first one, and I just thought it was such a cool idea, seeing all these people come together and put out this awesome map pack. And that's what inspired me to be part of it. I think at the end of the day, it was really just feeling like I missed out on something really cool with the first Red Faction Unite. It was a great idea. It was a great project. It brought a lot of great mappers together, and I just thought, like, I want to be part of that. And so when Red Faction 2 or Red Faction United 2 came around, I jumped on the prospect of being part of it. And I don't know if they reached out to me or if I reached out to them, but regardless, I got in and eventually made my map, Goober's favorite map. No, Jurassic Park, which was obviously a big movie at the time, etc., etc., and it just felt like the perfect map to develop. I really wanted to make a skeleton and push my skills as a mapper. And that's another thing too, is like when you're part of a community event like that, it really brings the best out of you, even though I don't consider that a good map. Because most of the map is pretty bad. I spent a lot of time on one element and then sort of had to rush the rest. And I will get you that updated version, Goober, someday. I promise you that, my friend. But as far as being part of the process, it was really just feeling like I was part of the group. I really don't have much to say about that other than just being excited to be part of it and trying to live up to the caliber of mappers that were part of it. Back in the day, I was also young, and so I think it was just like this nervous energy of being part of something really great and being part of these big name mappers. I felt like I shouldn't be part of it, but I really wanted to, and I wanted to be as good as them. So there was this like pressure, but also this excitement to be like, yes, like I made it in a way. I'm part of the group, you know? So that's sort of how I look at the old days for Red Faction United. The modern view, I have a much more negative view on. No, I'm just kidding. The modern Red Faction United is awesome because it's Red Faction Reunited. It's us coming back together. And that was a totally different experience because it felt like we were all, it felt like a 20-year reunion, and everybody showing up like, oh my God, look who it is. Wow. You haven't aged a day, or you have. And that was really cool. It's just cool, like seeing everybody again and all these familiar names, and then just sort of being able to re-spark the flame in a way. It just felt like the beginning of a new era of Red Faction. It really did. With RFU5, like, we all put our well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I put my heart and soul into that because I was just like, "Yes, finally," I I just remembered my days with Red Faction Unite 2, and I just thought like, "Man, I don't wanna rush this. I really wanna get this right. I wanna be able to release maps that are completed, that can be played again in 5 years, and it's not gonna be some janky mess. Like, everything is properly there and put how it's designed how it needs to be designed." Like, that was obviously an exciting prospect, but also just being part of the community again. It was like, yes, like, we're all here together again, and it just felt like a support group in a weird way. Just like, and the fact that Red Faction Unite 5 gave us something that we were never able to do prior, which was work together on our maps. We could, through Discord, we could launch and have a stream of our maps, of our process. We could share maps back and forth and talk through a voice chat all together at the same time about a specific map and get little tips and tricks from other mappers. We never could do that back in the day. Suddenly here we are all talking together, looking at one person mapping. And man, it was just, there's something so profound about that, especially for us old schoolers who nobody saw us map. Suddenly you have people together. Oh, if you hit this hotkey, we'll actually fix that little thing. You're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. 20 years I've been doing this and had no idea. 20 years, whatever. But so I think the difference really was the fact that we were united. It was less about like us isolated making our maps to truly being united, sharing our concepts, sharing our processes, seeing each other map during the development phases, being able to have other mappers go through and be like, oh dude, like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. Oh, this is why your map's crashing, etc., etc. It totally changed the game. And then, obviously we've done another one since then, and I'm pretty sure we'll do a 7 eventually. Red Faction Fighter was a single player campaign that I developed, and I think it was because of the lack of modern single player campaigns. There were some multiplayer maps being made, but it was also an opportunity for me to challenge myself as a mapper to utilize half of the editor that isn't utilized in Deathmatch. All these elements I've seen for 20 years, all these little things, I've never clicked on. I've never used. And I thought, like, that'd be really cool to, like, develop a single-player campaign and really use this engine and this editor to its full potential, to actually utilizing it for its purpose, which was, originally single-player. So a lot of it was that, and then I also just had this idea pop in my head one day, and I just, it just kept, new ideas would attach to it, and I just started getting this fleshed out concept, and I was like, man, I should make this. And it's also a new challenge. I've made maps that, a lot of my maps have nothing to do with Deathmatch, and they're certainly not competitive maps. I've never ever been known as a competitive mapper. I always wanted to create creative environments, and I sort of went into this, but I've always wanted to create worlds that people can interact in and experience. And I've developed a lot of things like that. I made my Return of the Pirates map, which is way too big to be a deathmatch, but it's really just an experience. And then also my Haunted Mansion ride, that's very much just an experience, obviously. It's something I always really liked. I really liked the idea of this like on-rails experience. And I felt like with Deathmatch, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much story you can tell, and I always try to interweave some story into my deathmatch maps, but it can be tough. But with single player, you can actually guide somebody through these experiences far more than deathmatch can, and that's just very exciting. That's a very cool idea, and there's just it's especially with Red Faction, there's only been a handful of single player campaigns put out, but there's been thousands of deathmatch maps, almost 1,000 capture the flag maps. I assume probably at least 1,000, but just a handful of single player experiences. And it's just an untapped well, especially for myself. And I really wanted to challenge myself with that. And so I did that with part 1, and I have a far bigger idea for part 2 that I'm going to start developing before the end of the year, but that's a whole other topic. Geomod is what brought us all to Red Faction. Geomod is like... Geomod's the bait that gets people into Red Faction. It's such a simple concept, but it's so well done, and it's like scratching an itch. Just watch. For instance, I watched the trailer for this, and before doing it to get sort of inspired, and just watching the footage of Geomod in the glass house, I was just like, man, there's something about that. There's just there's something so satisfying about seeing Geo just, chunk of wall disappear, being able to create a tunnel, and there's just something so satisfying about it. It doesn't offer much gameplay. It doesn't offer much competitive advantage, but I tell you, it's like scratching an itch. It's almost like a satisfying video or a satisfying GIF. Those things where things fit perfectly together, and you're like, ooh, that's nice. It's sort of like that. It really doesn't add a lot to the game, but it does at the same time. Like, having the ability to take a rocket launcher, shoot a wall, and have a hole in the wall, and now you have a whole new pathway. That is something that, I can't even think of any modern games that offer that. That is such a cool idea. And so Geomod, while it does seem like a gimmick to get people to buy the game, it kept a lot of us, and it did. I'm sure a lot of us played Red Faction because of the gimmicky aspects, but a lot of people stayed for 20 years after the fact because of that one little gimmick. So I think it worked pretty well. And even to this day, it's a very satisfying element of the game, regardless of its use. I played Red Faction 2. It felt smooth. It felt all right, but it just felt plain dull and boring. I played Guerrilla for a second, and that's a good game. I don't like third-person games. I just can't quite get into it. So, again, looks great. It's probably an awesome game. So, yeah. And the other one, Armageddon, I haven't touched. I would say I don't even know if that's true. I don't know. I don't have a map that I'm like super, super proud of. I really like my Curse of the Mummy just because I had a goal and I accomplished it. The whole idea was like make a map on par with Rex. Dang it. And I feel like I did that with Office Sarcophagus, and then again with the revised version Curse of the Mummy. But honestly, I think my best map, okay, I'm going to say it because I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it. And it's called Alleyway, and it's part of my Snowed Out mod. It's such a small, simple little map, but it's like takes place in the 1940s. It's all snowy. There's some nice little music playing, and every once in a while I'll pop open that map and I just get the feels. I'm like, man, this feels good. And yeah, so I would say Alleyway for my Snowed Out 2 mod, which I'm gonna update for my Snowed Out 3, by the way. That's a little inside info for you guys. All right, I know all the devs are listening, obviously. So let me tell them. No, I would say if a new you're going to know my answer. Everybody's going to know my answer. But if a new Red Faction game comes out, please, from all that is holy, give us an editor. That's all I ask. It could be third person. I won't play the game, but I'll map for it. I think if a new game comes out, it's got to have multiplayer, and it has to have support from the devs. And if it has an editor or not, whatever. But I think the only reason Red Faction did so well was because it had an editor. They gave the community their tools to create their own maps and their own mods. Like, how many games do that? How many games go the extra mile to give their consumers tools to build upon their creation. That's so rare, I feel like. And I'm sure modern games do that and whatever, but really, it's like that extended the life of this game. We are here today because of that dang editor. That's my opinion. I don't know. Who knows, But I really feel like giving people tools to create their own version, to build upon what's been built, is so crucial. And it allows kids to find their own passions. It allows kids to develop careers. I have a whole career because of mapping for Red Faction back in the day. It was just because some devs thought it was a good idea. Let's go the extra mile and actually put it out an editor. Like, that is such a huge feat to try to give the community an editor. People talk a lot of crap on the devs of Red Faction, but I have nothing but really good things to say, because the fact that they did release what they did. They released the game as it was, with this editor, with these tools that kids like me at the time could just geek out on and disappear in, regardless of all the crazy crap going on in their lives. For certain people, it was an outlet. It was a way for kids to work on things and develop things. And I could have gotten into a lot of trouble as a kid, but I didn't. I spent a lot of my time, my angst, my stress into Red, into the editor, into making maps, into creativity. And to this day, I still have this like endless well of creativity. And I feel like some of that was because I built this foundation of support, of this mental fortitude at the time of like, you know what, like, regardless of depression, regardless of struggle, I have this tool, I have this world I can disappear in, and I can create like a god. I can go into this void and just start creating. And I can ignore all the chaos around me. And I wish devs understood like how awesome it is when they go that extra mile of actually giving people tools to be able to build things. And just, it's not some subscription-based crap. It's not asking for anything. It's just part of the game. You can open it or not. A lot of people play that game on PlayStation 2 don't even know there was an editor. And it's like, if there's a new game, please, consider the community. Consider the fact that these people have kept this game alive for so long. They brought it into the modern era, with guys like Rafal, and you had Pure Faction, obviously, back in the day. Give people an opportunity to develop skills beyond just playing a video game. Like, video games are awesome, but the ability to make a video game, if you're a kid and you think like, I want to make games, and you have the tool right there, that's priceless. And I really hope that in the future, when we do get a new Red Faction title, which I assume we probably will someday, that they consider the success of the first one. They consider what got them to the ball. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I almost said ball game. They consider what got them to the ball in the first place. Consider the fact that these tools are what kept the game alive. So just, please, devs, give us tools if you give us a new game. And I know that's a lot to ask, but it's, it goes a long way. So that would be my answer to that. Definitely RFU 5. Having everybody together after all our hard work, everybody put so much time into their maps. Vel put so much time into his map. And the fact that Ice came out right at the end and surprised us all with a map. Like, that was just such a great event. And I'll always cherish that event, because we almost filled up the server. Or I think we did, at one point. And that really stands out. Developing Snowed Out 2, for whatever reason, just being all cold with a blanket and developing these like snowy maps was like just a very cozy, magical time for me. And back in the day, trying to find secrets on old micro maps was just so fun. There was so much fun because we didn't have spectate back in the day. You couldn't just like fly around the map. Sure, you could open a map in an editor, But really, it was like, you want to find this stuff for yourself. And you didn't have the cheat. You didn't have spectate. I'll just, don't mind me. I'm just going to look around real quick. You had to go shoot at walls. You had to go test stuff out. And that was so fun. It was just like this era of exploration and discovery. And I'll never forget that. And I remember one of my first maps I ever put out had like this whole maze. It was a Star Wars Death Star. It was like my second map ever. 2002 or 2003, and it was this small little section of the Star Wars Death Star, and I spent like, here's the map, and I spent all this time like building this giant maze that was like secret in the map. It was just like a secret in the map, but everybody played that map, and nobody really played the map. Everybody wanted to know the secret, and there's all these little obstacles and all these little rooms you had to try to get through. And like a year after that is when Death Run finally came out. And I doubt there's any, I can't say I'm the originator of any of that stuff, but I always thought like how cool it was that I had this map back in the day with all these puzzles and all this whole run you had to do. And if you accomplish it, you get to this room and it's this big celebration, and there's every weapon in the game in there. There's a little chair you could chill out in. And it had all these little secrets that gave you all these like beneficial sniper spots and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a very fond memory too, is like just having people be like, Romek, please like show me how to get through this thing. Romek, how do I get in here? Romek, I'm stuck on this part. I would just get messages all day on Lols for You about that dang map. So yeah, that's some pretty good. That's a good memory too. It's the small community feel, like if you go to some bigger games, like you just get lost. Like you're just like you're just lost in the crowd. You really can't get to know people. It's just, there's no like, you can't come back this next day and see the same people. You know what I mean? You can't build that rapport. And there's something about Red Faction that allows that. And the people who are still around are still passionate about the game, and they care about what comes out. So if you put something out, they're curious. They're like, oh, what is this? Oh, interesting. Oh, cool. Ooh. And that's awesome. That support, because we're obviously all passionate about it. But the fact that people are passionate enough to check out your stuff, to give you feedback, remember you, like that brings me back. And obviously, but really more than anything, it's that small town vibe. It's just, we all know each other. We're all familiar with each other. I love that. And that to me is like so priceless. Like I just can't find that in other communities. Even, I should be moving up to newer games. I should be trying to develop in new engines. But at the same time, you know what I mean? It's like these 10 people are going to play it. I care more about their opinions than if I had like thousands of downloads or whatever, it's like, and it just like disappears into the masses. I'd rather share it with people that I care about. There's just something about that. And you can't find that everywhere. You can't, even online, it's like, good luck finding a small group that are passionate and know everybody's names, and, it's like cheers. But, yeah, so I would just say it's the community that really brings me back, and keeps me here, and I don't want to go anywhere. There's a little while where I was like, man, what am I doing? I should be focusing on more bigger things. Screw all that. So different. I mean, it's back in the day, if you wanted to play a custom map, you had to go to a website. You had to search it. Hopefully you know the name of it, and then you have to try to find it. You got to sit there for 6 hours to let it download, and then you got to install it, and then you can finally play it. So it's like 2 days after you had that initial idea, you're finally playing this map. Nowadays, it's like any other modern game, which is amazing. It's changed the landscape a lot. It's what we always wanted, obviously, as a community, is just like being able to launch a server and just you have the map. What? It's crazy. It's game changing, and what else can you say? Back in the day, it was, you were lucky if you got downloads for your maps. You had to. I don't even know. I don't understand how my maps got downloaded. I don't. you know, you had to have something catchy. I made like Star Wars maps and things that like had popular names, like things that people knew. But it wasn't even for that. It was just, I don't know. It was just a different scene. So nowadays it's like you don't have to think about it. You don't have to look at the name and say, nah, for me, again, I was on 28K modem. Okay. 20K internet. I couldn't download that. I hadn't, oh my gosh. I had to take a nap if I downloaded a map. But it's like, I being able to just see a server, click on it, and launch it, and 3 seconds later you have the map and you're in it. Like it's game changing, and it brings Red Faction to the modern world or the modern era with HD, with the auto downloader, etc., etc., etc. So the idea of competitive is sort of funny to me because it's just such a janky game. I can't imagine people trying to take that game serious and being like, yeah, like I'm going to be number 1 in Red Faction. Because it's like, again, I never made maps like trying to be super polished and trying to think about the gameplay because I was like, what gameplay? This thing is janky. It's just fun. It's fun to push the limits on things and make silly stuff. So I think once I wanted to obviously challenge myself and be like, all right, well, this is one thing I've never done for Red Faction. It's like an actual competitive map. And obviously we have a gang of people who still play competitively. So I was like, all right, let's try this out, And with the help of people like Nick in his video and our discussions about it, it gave me a totally different perspective on it and an understanding of like, okay, I think I understand the approach I need to take in order to make a competitive map. And it took me 3 or 4, 5 iterations to finally start resembling something that of a competitive nature. And it was like, ugh. But as terrible as the process was, because we're trying to fit within the limitations of an older game, and not just the limitations of the game, the competitive scene of the game, it really narrows what you can do, and it really narrows. Even when you're developing for competitiveness, you have these ideas in your head. Yeah, all right, I have 3 pathways here they could take. But even with that, the game's so janky, there's still limitations that you miss, and there's still things that just make the map unplayable. And you're like, oh my goodness, back to the drawing board, But I do feel like after Olympians, I figured it out. Not figured it out like I got it now, you know what I'm saying? But like I do think I can make another competitive map with the skill set, or at least with the understanding of what is required for a competitive map now. And I think I actually did that with my Blasted Canyons remake, and I'm pretty curious to see what you guys eventually think of it, because it feels like a default map in a lot of ways, but sort of a different take on Warlords. Not exactly like Warlords, totally different, but not, because obviously it has to be similar. But that's sort of my answer to that. It's hard to fit within the it's hard to fit within the bounds of an older janky game and try to make it competitive. I don't know. I really can't even put my thoughts into words. It was tough. It's not that fun, honestly. And it's probably my least enjoyable experience with mapping, but I did it. I got through it. And then now I feel like I have a better handle of it. And then if I do make a CTF map in the future, that I think I'll be able to speed up the process and actually deliver something that's a little bit more competitive than some of my other maps. But again, just to wrap up that little point. There's a lot of different mappers, and there's a lot of approaches to maps. And that's the beauty of Red Faction, is it doesn't have to fit within the confines of a competitive map. These mappers sort of push the boundaries of mapping, within Red Faction. You get things that don't even resemble maps. And I know people will say like, oh, well, that's bad, but it's not, because what it's doing is these people are trying to push the limits of Red Faction, trying to push the envelope. They're trying to create new concepts, new game types, all within the editor. And that was regardless of success or failure, that was a lot of what people were trying to do. And that's something very admirable, and that's why I think a lot of those maps still hold up today, regardless of jank, regardless of quality. There's still like so much out there. There's so many game styles, so many gameplays of Red Faction that can be distilled within a single map, a single custom map that you don't get anywhere else. And not a lot of communities have that, and that sort of changes how Red Faction can be played. And that's what a lot of mappers do is they try to change the way the game can be played, and that's I don't know. I take my hat off to that. So, well, thanks for interviewing me, you guys. It's awesome. I feel very that's awesome. It makes me feel good, and I think you guys are doing great work here. I'm so excited to see what you guys put out, and thank you guys seriously for keeping this game alive. It's it's keeping me around. You guys being here, so, and a lot of others. So you guys are the core of this community, and I'm just happy to be part of it. So thank you guys.